what that experience taught me, looking back, was the motto I have when you're building any sort of career is just say yes. Like if someone wants you to help, if someone wants you to get involved, you know, as long as it's an overall safe situation, like just say yes, just go do it. Because I think the thread I hear in both of your shares as well is like, oh, I met this person who then X amount of years later, this happened. And so the relationships you build when you say yes really come back to benefit you. And then the second decision I made was I did not go to Los Angeles. And I spent some time there in school, but I stayed in Chicago. And for me, I consider myself an entrepreneur first and a producer second. And I liked the idea that Chicago was a little bit less formed, a little bit more entrepreneurial in nature. I felt like I could be a bigger fish in a small pond. And then the third thing I would say is 10 years later, after you put in, I think you got to put in like a solid 10 years before it starts to become, the connections start to be easier, making things starts to be easier. My business partner and I, Brittany Ward, just formed our production company, and we had a film at Sundance this year, and we have another feature and two features and two shorts that will be released this year. We play mostly in the $2 to $10 million low budget feature space. So I say that because I think I'm at a third juncture. So if I come back here in 15 years and you ask me, I will be like, remember that time you were on that panel when this was just beginning? What was a moment that your career pivoted? And so I'm hopeful that I'm in the middle of something.
That's great.
With an Oscar?
Hmm?
With an Oscar. 15 years from now, we're all going to have Oscars.
Yes, with an Oscar, ideally, yeah.
So let me ask you all this question in terms of working with writers and creatives, being writers and writers yourself. Let's say just start at the initial idea point. Like everybody's got at least one good idea for a film or television show, in my experience. Right?
Sure.
Every uncle at Thanksgiving always says like, you know what you should do? That's what my uncle says. So I got a story for you. Drop everything you're doing. So let's just start at that stage. Is there anything, even before you fully develop an idea, certainly write the idea, is there anything that you can or should do to quote unquote prepare for success? Thinking of the end game at the beginning. Is there anything that
I know what
you
my immediate
encourage?
answer is.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know how encouraging this is. I tend to take the hard truth angle, so if I bother anybody, I apologize. Start thinking of the next one. You need so many more. It's not just the one. Write it. As stupid as that advice is, if you have the idea, don't just sit on the idea. The idea itself is not going to sell itself. You have to put in the work in order to actually execute it, which then also means you have to educate yourself to know how to execute it, and then you have to spend the time writing it, and then not assuming this is the one. Every major producer, executive, writer, who is working regularly, they have hundreds of projects that they're juggling. Even if they're just ideas, they're constantly in some form, or maybe hundreds is a little bit of an exaggeration, but they're constantly juggling other potential ideas. What else might you do? They have time that they're setting aside. They're at least in just like their notes app, other ideas. And then they're focusing on the one that they're trying to finish right now. And so I think it's a mindset that you need to have that you got to play the long game here. This is not a get rich quick or ever scheme. Right?
Yeah.
So you need an answer to the what else you got.
But this is also in like a positive sense. Like this, if this is what you want to do. I mean, what I gleaned from what Angie was saying, at an early age, she knew she didn't want to be a hostess the rest of her life.
Yes,
that's I'm making a decision to do this, and then she went for it. I think that I'm kind of speaking from personal experience. I'm from ages 18 to 22. Like most people, you're kind of just figuring out, do I like this, and do I really want to do this? The sooner you can make the decision that you're going to do it without worrying about whether or not it's going to work, it'll work better. because you're not second guessing yourself. So I would say it's a mindset first and foremost.
Yeah, I think just to build on what you're saying, you can't look at it like, about being like a success other than, well, it depends how you define success. If you're following your passion, the success will follow. And I think that's a really big thing. And
Because you see success easier.
it uses, well, you
As
define
opposed to the
success.
huge-
You,
right,
you
yeah.
define success. I feel more successful. It's not necessarily getting a big paycheck, although a big paycheck is nice, but I was getting a nice fat paycheck every time I directed a commercial campaign. But I get more I feel more successful as a creative now that I'm writing. But I think a big mistake that I made as a writer, like for my second script, I championed that one script for years, kind of on the side, while I was doing my day job.